Chapter 5, Level 2623, Coruscant.
If there was one certainty in Axel Greylark's life, it was that he could always bet on himself. Quite literally. Deep in the back room of Rake's parlor, Axel was one of 5 players hunched over a roulette wheel that the eponymous proprietor of the gambling den had created as a true game of chance. Illuminated by a low-hanging lamp, the chrome and gold pit spun, and each player tossed their cues into the fray. Axel kept his eyes trained on the shimmering carapace of his cue. He'd chosen the violet and emerald one because they were his family's colors. And since he was gambling with his family's fortune, the correlation seemed apt. As the spinning slowed and each tiny sphere rattled into one of the 40 slots, several players threw up their hands in disgust and disappointment. Axel squeezed his trembling knee as his cue teetered on the rusty line between 2 divots. He bet his last stack of credits, plus the chit Rake herself had backed him, on account of him being such a good regular and all. The cue finally tumbled into the golden jackpot. Axel blinked sleep-deprived eyes. He'd won! He'd finally won! And it had only taken... Axel glanced at his chrono. Damn it all to hell. Had he really been here for 10 hours? One losing player smacked the lamp overhead, causing it to swing and strike the dealer. 2 hulking enforcers removed the poor loser, leaving those accusing Rake of fixing the games utterly silent. Axel eased back into his seat. His fingers had come away sticky from the armrest. He didn't want to know what the secretion was, but he was certain it hadn't come from him. Axel's droid, QN1, nudged his pant leg below the table. Quinn beeped something that sounded like disapproval of Axel's choices, then opened the triangular panel on its chest. It offered up a small silver flask, which Axel accepted with a gracious smile. He unscrewed the top and took a quick nip. Smoky whiskey burned pleasantly all the way down as he carefully watched the patrons of the gambling hall thin out. Some headed to find better fortunes in the rat-infested dens lining the pleasure district. Others might clean up and head to the upper levels for the start of the workday. Axel gave no sign of moving. And neither did the Mirialan woman or a tipsy Rhodian who tapped a credit on the lip of the table. "What?" the Mirialan woman sitting beside him all night asked. He rather liked the black diamond marks on her cheeks, and she rather liked taking his credits. Until now. "The cheap stuff's not good enough for you?" The Rhodian chortled, and Axel drank again. A drop landing on his 1,000-thread count shimmer silk tunic. "How do you know this isn't the cheap stuff?" he asked.
"Don't mind him,"
Rake spoke in her scratchy, whistling voice.
"Coruscant's little prince don't trust no one to pour him a drink. Isn't that right?"
Rake was an Utai, with a wrinkled, pinched mouth that gave her the appearance of sucking on a sour drop. Her bulbous, protruding eyes were fixed on Axel as she slipped between the roulette and sabacc tables. She relieved the dealer and plunked into his seat. A pink drink appeared at her side from the many-armed bartender.
"Rake, darling, I mean no offense," Axel said, taking another sip of the Chandrillan whiskey, a gift from the senator's daughter on his last visit. "But this was a very good year."
And it was true. That batch was 1,000 credits a bottle. A tragic shipping accident had made it the rarest batch in the galaxy, with only 300 bottles left in existence.
But what Axel Greylark wasn't saying was that he'd seen far too many people poisoned in his day to trust a drink from a dank hole in the wall in the steaming bowels of the city. Even one as nice as Rake's parlor.
Why would I poison you, my best, most handsomest customer?
Rake asked. The ring of her mouth took on the drink's pink tinge.
Besides, you owe me too much money. If anyone wants you dead, it's that heiress. What's her name?
The Mirialan snapped her fingers.
Lady Lulu Faradaisy. Something ridiculous like that.
Quinn bleeped what might pass for a chortle among droids. Axel shoved the flask back into its chest compartment. Lady Lureen Faraday, he corrected. Even going down as far as the entrails of Coruscant wasn't enough to get away from the gossip of his very public split from the Chandrillan heiress of Faraday spirits, now shipping all over the galaxy. The only reason he remembered the Faraday family business's slogan was because it was the first thing Lureen had said to introduce herself, followed by her father's title of senator. And don't believe everything you watch in the hollows. Rake reset the roulette table and re-racked the selection of cues.
So you didn't break up with her by standing her up at the spaceport?
No, that's right, he admitted. There's just more to the story. Axel bit down on his back teeth and frowned at his warped reflection on the side of the lamp. The yellow overhead light made his complexion sallow and emphasized dark circles that hadn't been there 3 days before. His dark hair was rumpled and his eyes were bleary, but he had looked worse. In his pocket, his comlink buzzed. Likely his mother. Again. He silenced it because he knew what she wanted. His mother wanted what everyone else did. An answer as to why he'd done what he'd done. Instead of making the decision to settle down, start to get serious, he'd taken his favorite speeder and a stack of credits and wound up at whatever gambling den, club, or cantina would give him entry. He didn't need to explain himself. Why bother? The HoloNet, his friends, and his family had already made up their minds. The only place to hide from another one of his family's interventions was at Rake's, which was why he was determined to let his good luck take him as far as it would go. His talent for silencing any voice of doubt allowed him to ignore his calm. Besides, you're much better company, Axel said, never letting his smile falter. A lifetime of the very best schooling, from private tutors to the Royal Academy, had given him pretty manners. Rake ate it up. And because you've been so good to me and extended me a chit to keep playing, I'd never leave you in the lurch.
'Cause you don't want to end up in a ditch,
the Mirialan woman murmured. He leaned forward on his elbow and grinned. Darling, don't threaten me with a good time.
Losing to you is not my idea of a good time,
she purred, walking slender fingers across the top of his hand. He angled himself slightly toward her.
But now things have turned. You sure you're not secretly a Jedi?
The sniveling orange Rhodian honked a laugh.
Ha! If he was a Jedi, he wouldn't be losing all day and night.
A cold, ugly sensation spread from the apex of Axel's chest. He brushed her slender green fingers away. His voice like flint, he said, "Don't insult me, darling." Confused, the Mirialan backed off and snatched a drink off a passing serving droid's tray. She knocked it back.
Are we going to flirt all night, or are we going to play?
Asked the Rhodian.
You've had enough, friend. Buy-in's a lot more than that.
Rake said benevolently. The Rhodian got up abruptly, muttering in the language Axel barely understood from accompanying his parents on ambassadorial visits to the swamp world. Something about his husband killing him. Whatever it was, the Rhodian was out. The Mirialan stacked her winnings into neat towers. The two of them had been trading the same credits back and forth for hours.
You keep having your fun, little prince. The rest of us must go earn our fortunes.
She raised her hand to caress his face, but he leaned away. What bores. He wasn't going to let her or anyone ruin his new streak. He sat up and reached for the tray of cues.
You too.
Rake added, gesturing at him.
Go home, Greylark. I already run the risk of angering your mother.
Leave my mother out of this, Axel said, a hard edge clipping his voice, one he did his best to keep buried. Quinn hovered into the air, the droid's triangle chest panel backlit with pulsing red light, as happened when Axel's temper flared. Stragglers in the den turned to glare at him, to see if he'd cause a scene, if he'd join the unfortunate moof milkers tossed out into the gutter outside. He couldn't help but feel he'd done the very thing Rake had wanted him to do, let himself be baited. Because of his mother, the admirable, glorious, magnanimous Chancellor Greylark, he had been denied entry into most of the clubs on every other level. But not here. This was a place where he could have fun, forget, buried so deep in the belly of Coruscant, in a place that smelled like acrid sewers and musty recycled air. A place of shadows, where he didn't have to be Axel Greylark, son of the most important woman in the galaxy. He could just be his wretched self.